This was the slap in the face that I needed when I was building my business, that I needed to see and be like, oh my gosh, I'm putting myself in a crappy situation and I'm gonna keep repeating these same mistakes. So until you get that part sorted, everything's gonna feel hard. Everyone makes mistakes, myself included, and I wish that someone had been a little more honest with me about the potential for making mistakes when you have a business. I have been in all different kinds of businesses for the last decade. I started when I was around 20 years old, really diving into entrepreneurship, and the things that I have learned have been aplenty, and I've shared a lot of what I've learned with all of you, but I've never really talked about my biggest mistakes. But I think it's really important because if you don't talk about the mistakes, you can't talk about the lessons that came with them. And my hope is that if you watch this video and you listen to some of these mistakes and you haven't made them yet, it will stop you from having to go through the pain of making some of these mistakes. And at the end of the day too, I don't really look at any of these as mistakes that you can't bounce back from. I do think mistakes need to be looked at as lessons, because the inevitable part of having a business or trying to start a business or being an entrepreneur is you're going to screw up, period. You will make mistakes, and if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not moving fast enough and you're probably not thinking big enough. So it's a kind of a badge of honor to screw up, to be honest, but also something that I want to help you with, because if the more we share, the more we can all grow a little faster and leapfrog over some of the hurdles. So I'm gonna be talking about my biggest mistakes in my business and getting pretty transparent with you about some of my biggest boo-boos I have ever made. One of which cost me close to $500,000. And yeah, we're gonna dive into that story in just a second. If there's one thing that I can teach you right off the bat that I feel like has been one of my greatest lessons, is that there's two things that are gonna really be a problem for you in trying to grow anything. And that is your cash flow and your bandwidth. So in your business, if you don't have cash in the bank, if you don't have what they call runway, which is basically how many months can you sustain your business if everything stopped today. Now, I know you're sitting there listening to this and you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I don't know the answer to this question. That's okay. I remember one of my mentors did this exercise with me and I was like, well, I have about half a month sitting in the bank. And that was like 2 years ago. Now we are well set up for months if anything were, God forbid, to go wrong. But what I have learned and my biggest mistakes have come from a lack of bandwidth, being exhausted, tired, and vulnerable, and a lack of cash flow. And that also leads to you being really vulnerable because you make decisions that are based off of being reactive instead of being proactive, and you get into situations where something is gonna go wrong. So my first big mistake that I ever made in my business was I relied solely on word of mouth. I was building my consultancy before I even was on YouTube talking about any of this stuff. And I was behind the scenes, didn't really market it. And the good thing was I was really good at what I did, and I was helping businesses build their brands using social media, and I was doing all the management and everything. So naturally, people started to talk, and I was just getting clients coming to me. So that's awesome. But I sort of was just coasting along thinking, well, this is great. I don't even have to market myself. I don't even have to do the extra work to put myself out there. I didn't really want to because I was a solopreneur and I didn't have more bandwidth to take anybody else on. But I also didn't have the cash flow in case something went wrong. So one of my clients went bankrupt and boom, majority of my revenue gone overnight. And I was living on my own for the very first time. I had just gotten my apartment, and I remember sitting down with my parents and being in a full panic of, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I don't know where my next client is gonna come from. I should just go get a job. And I remember it was this pivotal moment, and thank God I have amazing parents, and I hope you do too. And if you don't, you need to have this belief in yourself, and I'm telling you, it will work out. if you just start putting yourself out there and start sharing your genius and start networking with the right people, the work will come. So that's what I did. I basically went into fix-it mode and I started reaching out to anyone I had ever met who worked in the business space in Vancouver. And I said, you know, I have this consultancy. I've been working with these clients. Here are some of my results and case studies. And I just grinded and I started putting together proposals, which I had never had to do before. And you just learn. It's trial by fire. But again, it would be amazing if I didn't have to be reactive about it and I could have been proactive. So my biggest mistake there was that I had no marketing plan. I had no idea how I was going to get new leads. I had no idea what I was going to do if one of my clients just disappeared on me, which does happen. People can't pay their bills. People flake on payments, unfortunately. So always having a lead flow coming into you is vital to the long-term success of your business, and being in a place where you can make decisions from abundance and from, yeah, I want to do this. I don't have to do this, which leads me to my second mistake, which is working with clients I freaking hate it. And we've all been there, but I have worked with clients strictly in that particular moment in my life because I needed cash. I needed to run the business and I needed to take on clients. And so people will always want to hire you if you're good at what you do, but it doesn't mean you always want to work with them, because what I learned was just any clients isn't really a good client. And just because someone wants to work with you doesn't mean you need to work with them. And I learned it the hard way. I also think the big lesson that came out of this was that bad clients, maybe they're paying you and they might even pay you really well. Some of my worst clients have been my highest paying clients, but they take up so much mental energy, so much time and space, so much of your bandwidth again, and your capacity, that they soul suck you into hating what you do. So my definition of a bad client is someone who takes up like 90% of your time without any reward really outside of monetary. So if I was just in this to make money, I would have just gone and been a lawyer or something, or a doctor, I don't know. But I would have gone to school and I would have done something that was stable and secure, and I knew I was going to be making X amount, but I didn't do it for that. I built my business for freedom. I built my business to have a choice. I built my business to make sure that I could work in any situation that I wanted to work in and with people that I wanted to work with, that I was excited about. So again, having minimal cash flow, having no backup plan, having no marketing strategy, having no way of getting new leads, having no social media presence put me in a crappy situation where I was having to take on clients that I hated, which then was this awful cycle of hating my clients, being exhausted, having no energy, hating what I did, and not even wanting to do my work. So that was the second biggest mistake that I ever made. If you can relate to that, let me know in the comments. My third biggest mistake ever is not testing. And what I mean by this is I worked my face off on this product, this offering that I had created, and it took me so long to put it all together. And I didn't think through, okay, I'm doing all of this work, but I actually haven't tested what I'm putting out there. So I put it out there into the world. The business generated close to $500,000, but I didn't think through the fact that a lot of it was time-sensitive information that then required a crap ton of updates. And so I built this successful business, but I couldn't actually sustain it because I constantly had to be updating it and tweaking it, and we were getting customer issues and customer complaints, and it was just a nightmare. So I had to basically axe the whole business after putting in all of this time and effort. So if you're building something, I am such a big proponent of testing it with a small group of people or just a couple of clients before you create something that you kind of put out into the entire world. Because if you have the trust and the credibility, that's amazing, which I do, and I'm very good at what I do. But that also meant that people were super eager to buy what I was selling, and I hadn't thought through the amount of upkeep that it was going to require to keep it going and to keep the customers happy. So testing your ideas, doing beta groups and beta launches, so important to the sustainability of your business, and truthfully also to your own happiness and peace of mind. My fourth mistake is not hiring a team earlier. Hiring people, for me, I don't see it as this output of money. I see it as an investment in my growth of the business. And so there's a book that I have read probably 5 times at this point. If you haven't read it, every single person who wants to run a business should read this book. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. This thing is gold. I have listened to it on audiobook, I have read it, and it's all about building a business that can sustain itself without you being involved, which for me is the true definition of a successful business. You should be able to run your business without being burnt out all the time, without you having to run every little detail, because God forbid something happens and things do happen, what's gonna happen to your business? So you got to think about how it's going to sustain yourself if you're not around. And that's been the biggest game changer for me. So I wish if I could turn back time, I don't have regrets, but I think if I were to change something in a big way, I would have hired someone a lot sooner to help build and scale the business to a greater place so that I could move more so into my genius zone and do more stuff that really push the needle on growing the business, like the marketing, like the lead generation, like building relationships, like being able to go speak at the big conferences and gain recognition and credibility there, because as a one-woman show, I wasn't able to do that really. So this book, game changer, read it. And yeah, one of my biggest mistakes is not hiring a team sooner. My fifth big mistake goes back to money and cash flow, and it's the least sexy part of running a business, but it's also the most important, because without money, without cash flow, you don't really have a business. You kind of just have a hobby that's working you into the ground. So I read this book, another book recommendation, Profit First. I interviewed the author of this book on my podcast, Mike Michalowicz. It's a really good episode. We'll link to it below. But it's all about eradicating entrepreneurial poverty, because people get into business to build freedom, to build wealth, to build abundance, to make as much as you want, to have no ceiling. But then the funny thing is, you start to build a business and you start paying yourself last. You start taking peanuts instead of actually making any money at all. And that's normal in some early stages of the business. But eventually, if you have a successful business, you should be reaping the benefit. It is your business after all. So Profit First is all about how to structure your allocations and how you allocate your money in your company to make sure you have this really healthy business and that you have a safety net in case shit hits the fan and you have a couple of months that are a little bit slow, or you don't have as many sales, or whatever it might be. So you're not in this constant state of stress and reactivity, and instead you're super proactive and you know that you can just like be in ease and do things that you want to do in the business, grow the business at the rate that you want to grow it, instead of having to be in this reactive cycle all the time. So highly recommend that you read that book as well, for sure. It changed the game for me. I went from being in that cycle of needing to make more money, bring in more leads, and like constant stress to, okay, I can chill for a second, and we have the team in place, and we know we can pay the team, and I know I'm making money, and I'm not getting everything last. I'm not just taking the peanuts that are left over. I'm actually prioritizing myself in this business, so I'm happy, because the more happy and healthy you are as the entrepreneur and founder of the business, the more happy and healthy your team is going to be, and your culture is going to be, and your community is going to be, and your audience and your followers and everything else, and the more free you'll be to do the things that you're the best at in the world. So again, I think to wrap everything up, and I just want to hammer this point home because I've gotten myself in some really crappy situations, a lot of which I just mentioned, by being vulnerable. And man, woman, doesn't matter. We're all susceptible to that if we're not focused on the most important thing in your business, which is sustainability. The most important thing in your business is your profit, is your income coming in, is your revenue. But revenue even that is not the thing to focus on, because if you're making as much money as you're putting out, that's not really a fun business to be in either. So you want to make sure that you actually have cash flow, that you have profit, that you have a safety net. And that sometimes requires building a little bit slower and making sure that you're making smart financial decisions in your business. And again, if this is triggering you, I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry, because this was the slap in the face that I needed when I was building my business, that I needed to see and be like, oh my gosh, I'm putting myself in a crappy situation, and I'm gonna keep repeating these same mistakes until I'm not vulnerable anymore, until I'm in a position where I have bandwidth, I have help, I have abundance on my team, I have space, I have financial freedom, I have the cash flow. So until you get that part sorted, everything's gonna feel hard, and you can't really scale to the place that you wanna scale to because you're constantly stressed, and your energy in your head mentally is going into this negative place and going into a reactive place, like I said, instead of being able to move with ease forward and to grow in a way that feels really good for you, your business, and your community. Okay, so this is the first time I've ever talked about my big mistakes. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this. Give me some suggestions below of things like this that you want to see. It's kind of therapeutic to talk about it because no one's perfect. And I think it's really easy to put people on a pedestal that you see killing it or crushing it, but just know that everybody's got their stuff and everybody's making mistakes, and you just have to learn from them. If you keep making the same mistakes again, I think that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing but expecting a different result. So I wanted to share this with you because I want you to know that it's normal and making mistakes is part of this game, but I also hope it's going to help you avoid some of them. So let me know in the comments what you thought. Be sure to subscribe for new videos every single week. I'm here to help you guys and serve you guys and entertain you guys. And so I hope you're loving our new videos, our new style, and we want to get your feedback on it because we plan on just continuing to get better and better and better. So hit that like button if you enjoyed this, subscribe for new videos every week, share this with someone who maybe is going through their own mistake or having like a bit of a moment in their business and needs to know that it's totally normal. Love you. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.